Hi and welcome. I'm Linda and I'm here to show you how to make these adorable little shabby hearts. We're going to start with some shapes cut out of corrugated cardboard box. So I used my die maker and I cut these little hearts out. You could use an X-Acto knife and scissors. I'm going to spritz those lightly with water. So what this does is it sort of loosens up the fibers in the cardboard, makes it a little more pliable. So then I just go ahead and pick at it with my fingernails. You could use a piercing tool, anything that's got a little sharp corner or a rough edge that you can get in there and just pick it apart. Try tearing some of the layers off while keeping some of it still intact. So I just sort of work it slowly. If it needs, you can spritz it again. Sometimes the covering is really a tough paper, so the little extra spritz of water really helps. But I just like to work with it slowly, sort of peel back the layers, show some of that corrugated underneath, have fun with it. It's just so much fun. You just never know what it's going to look like when you're done. So sometimes I find that if I spritz it and I get the little fibers wet enough, I can actually play with it with my fingers and roll back some of the edges. So it gives you a little rolled edge, some dimension and texture there. So I'm making two of these. These are what I was making for a shabby journal book that I've been working on. And just really, really like them. So once you get the papers all peeled back the way you like, if it's still a little damp, I just hit it with a heat tool for a few seconds, minute or two, get it nice and dry. And this is the Ranger heat tool, so it doesn't blow my pieces all over the place, just dries it really nice for it. And then I'm going to dry brush on some white gesso. For this technique, I like to use a thicker gesso, and so that's why I'm using the golden. I find it's a little bit thicker and it's easier to use in a dry brush method. So I've got a little flat paintbrush here, and what I do is just take a little bit of the gesso and then tap most of it off. And I just tap it right back on the inside of the lid from the bottle. And just lightly brush across and up and down and however you want on that cute little corrugated heart. We're not painting it a solid white, we're just dry brushing it. So nice light strokes, just quick and easy. Shouldn't take you more than maybe a minute to get these two pieces done. You want some of that brown to still show through. That's what gives it that cute little shabby look. When you're done, you want to make sure that you're sticking your brush in water because that gesso will dry like cement on there. Always recap your gesso so it doesn't dry out. And then I'm just going to hit these up with the heat tool again to dry my gesso. Now for the next step, I like to add a bit of what I call noise because I sort of painted these with a white gesso. It leaves it with a little flat feeling. So by adding some noise to it, I'm bringing back some more dimension. So what I do is I use a waterproof ink pad. So for this, I use the Ranger Archival ink in a jet black, and then just put them both together and stamp on there. I just used a script stamp. It's nothing you can read. It just gives it a little bit of texture on there, a little bit of noise. And then you want to heat set that. So if you do spritz or use any other liquids, that ink's not going to run. So now the fun part begins. You can decorate these. So this is a old piece of vintage lace I pulled out of my bag, and I don't need much, so I just pulled out a small strip and cutting a line here of the lace. And I don't want it to look new, so I just muss it up with my fingers and then wrap it around, tie it in a cute little knot in the front. Now, if you're more comfortable, you could glue this to the back first, but I do these so often that I find the lace stays there, at least until I get it glued down to where it's going to be. So then you can just muss around with that, trim the ends. So we're going to do the same thing to both of these hearts. So again, just a strip of vintage lace, loop it around the back and tie it in front. I just tie a little knot. And then just take your scissors, trim the ends off however you want. You could leave them long, you can make them shorter. They're just really, really cute. So this is a journal page that I'm going to be using one of the hearts on, and that's a corrugated belly band that I have there. And it just looked so plain to me, it needed something. I couldn't figure out what. So when I came across these hearts in my stash of die cuts that I keep, I just thought they would be the perfect embellishment. So you can see when I lay it on there, the edges are really hard to distinguish. And so I like to just go around and edge it using my black ink pad. And that's going to make it stand out a little bit more. If I was putting this on a dark background or maybe an all-white background, I wouldn't need that. But because the background is pretty much the same as the heart, I just thought the black edging made a nice little contrast in there. And you could use a distress ink for this. I was just using what I already had on my tabletop. So we can dress these up even more with little buttons or gems. I tend to grab for my vintage button jar. I have them in all different sizes, all colors of white. And I think the vintage buttons with the vintage lace just look so nice together. I'm using the Designer Dries Clear from Art Institute. And the easiest way I find to glue buttons is to put your glue on the background and then stick your button into the glue. I like this glue because it sets up nice and quick. So just hold it in place for a couple of seconds and you're done. Now I'm going to add a little word. These are tiny words by Tim Holtz. And I just go through there and find something I think will work in my shabby journal. And again, I'm going to ink around the edges so you can distinguish it from the background. And even though they are a sticky back, you peel them off and just stick them down. I never trust the sticky, so I always tend to use my Designer Dries Clear on these, and it takes just a very, very thin line of glue. Doesn't take a lot. And then just press and stick. And there we go. I just love these. They're free to make. Everybody has cardboard boxes. You could cut any shape out, just even if you don't have a die cutting machine, just use an X-Acto blade or scissors and trace a pattern. So I hope you enjoyed this little video. And then I also was able to use some of these on a scrapbook layout. So there's all different ways you can use them.